Over the last 2 years, I grew both an AI agency and an AI product business to over 100K a month. And one of the most important but trickiest things to get right is pricing. I made a ton of mistakes and also learned that most advice online sounds great, but doesn't actually work in practice. So in this video, I'll show you the exact pricing strategy to follow to get your first clients and to get to 10K a month fast, show you how pricing should change when you scale an AI agency, and show you how to price productized AI solutions. Now, quick note, there are many different ways to price. There are upsides and downsides to each. I've experimented a lot, made a lot of mistakes, and this is just my recommendation on how to price based on my experience and from what I've seen with my AI Accelerator members. Now, pricing AI solutions depends on the stage you're at in your journey and what you're selling. So I've broken it down into 3 different stages, which is the most common path for people starting an AI business, right? You start by yourself with your first client, then you might grow a team or a small team, and from there you could potentially go into a productized solution. Now, this is not the only path. Some people start with a productized solution right away. Some people go from stage 1 to stage 3. That's why, depending on where you're at in your journey, you can also use the timestamps below to go to the most relevant part for you. Also, if you're interested in building an AI business and want more help from me and my team, definitely check out my accelerator, where we give you resources, playbooks, and one-on-one coaching to help you get your first clients and grow an AI agency or AI business. Let's start with stage 1, where you're generally still alone. Maybe you have a co-founder or a friend. You can be niched, you can be a general agency, but you're trying to get your first 10K a month consistently and work with your first clients. Now, before showing you the pricing models I recommend for this stage, it's important to note that in order for you to get good at pricing AI projects, you need to be good at sales and scoping. That's why you have to accept that when you start out, your pricing is not going to be perfect, because these are skills that you have to develop and they're learned by doing. I have 2 videos on my YouTube channel about sales and scoping, so you can check those out after the video, but I want to focus this video on pricing and show you how you can get started even without having much sales and scoping experience. Now, in stage 1, when you're just starting out with your first clients, your goals here are not to do it perfectly yet or maximize profits, right? Your goal here is to get experience, learn how to scope, sell, and implement these solutions. You want to build and focus on building an acquisition channel and get to that 5 to 10K a month mark in order for you to really go all in on AI. Now, in order for you to get to that consistent cash flow, the path I recommend for most people to get there is through getting some long-term clients through an AI partnership where you have a retainer. This is what gives you that consistent cash flow, and most businesses need AI partners at the moment. And the general path I recommend to get there is you build trust and show ROI to the client by building 1 or 2 small automations. This will allow you to get into potentially a recurring retainer model with a business, and this can potentially mean you only need 2 to 4 clients on a partnership to get to that 10K a month consistently. So for the first automation project with a potential client, there are 2 main pricing models I recommend. For the first project or client, you can start with a free project. If you have a small business owner in your network, this can be one of the fastest ways to get that experience in how to build and deliver these types of solutions. And also in order for you to get at least 1 testimonial. Now, then the most common pricing model I recommend is to go with fixed pricing or project-based pricing. Now, again, there are a lot of downsides and upsides to each pricing model. Now, the downside with fixed pricing is that in later stages, especially, this pricing model can really kill your business, because if you've underscoped the project, which is very common, it will mean you'll be running at a loss. But again, at this stage, the goal here is to get us experience as fast as possible, and of course to potentially get them onto a retainer deal. Therefore, we want to de-risk this first project as much as possible for the client. And by doing a fixed project price, the customer doesn't have any surprises, knows what the solution is going to cost. If we would, for example, charge hourly and the project will take twice as long as you initially expected, the client most likely wouldn't be happy. Now, at this stage with your first clients, you're most likely not going to be very good at scoping yet. So what I would recommend is to estimate the time it will take you to build out a project and multiply it by 1.5 or 2x, depending on if you're just starting out or you have a bit more experience. Then put your price per hour. Again, if you're starting out, you can start on the lower end, maybe $50 an hour. When I was still by myself, I put my hourly rate at $100 an hour, and that's how you get to your price, right? You can charge this in 2 ways, upfront or 50% upfront, 50% after delivery. Again, we want to de-risk this as much as possible for the client, especially when we get started. So I always recommend to add in a money back guarantee, because it's a great way to de-risk it for the client. Now, a very common mistake in this stage is underscoping, which means you're spending weeks or months building an automation that you thought would take a week, which means, of course, you're heavily underpaid, and it often also leads to unhappy clients and becomes hard to convert them onto a retainer. So how do you avoid this? How do you avoid underscoping. And this is the most important lesson I learned to avoid underscoping when you're starting out. You want to ask yourself always, even in the calls with your potential client, when he explains his use case, what's the shortest, simplest path that still provides value? For example, this is a real case for me with one of my first clients. A client said, my sales reps are overwhelmed. Can you build an agent that qualifies leads, scores them, does follow-ups, and maybe can add in a voice agent? Now, it's tempting to think, I can do all of that and I'm going to figure it out. It's going to be a huge project. Let's scope this thing out and get a very juicy deal out of it right away. But this is what we don't want to do. We want to ask the question, what's the shortest, simplest path to value? And in this case, just taking that first part of this larger project will already provide them with a lot of value. So that's exactly the question I asked and proposed to the client to start off with, right? Will an automatic lead research that's updated in the CRM already be helpful for your sales reps? His answer was yes. So I suggested to start off with only this, and he accepted. And this also meant that instead of me quoting him $7,000 for this first project, which of course makes it very risky for the client and for you, because if you've underscoped this, it can mean you'll be heavily underpaid. Instead of that, I quoted him $1,200. I delivered the solution in less than a week. The client was very happy and the trust was established. And another really important reason to do this is because projects constantly change. Generally, these use cases clients come up with are just assumptions or ideas, right? And ideas change while working on them. For example, in this use case, instead of actually going for the automatic lead scoring, which was originally planned, the sales reps were really happy with the lead research automation, but asked if we can add some more data points. So actually, that first small project resulted in a different project than initially expected. I delivered that second project, the relationship and trust were built even more, and this then led to my first retainer, an AI partnership client, and got me my stable revenue. So once your client is happy and wants to continue building automations, there are two types of retainers you can use. We have a support or maintenance retainer and a build retainer. Now the one you want to get them on is the build retainer, because on a build retainer, you continuously build out new automations and maintain old automations at a fixed amount of hours per month that you dedicate to this client. Now the way I did this when I just started is by dedicating 1 or 2 days a week to one client. And this got me to more than $15,000 a month when I was still by myself, just through 4 retainer clients. Now, of course, this is a bit more commitment on the client side. So this again works best when the client is really bought in on AI and the relationship is established and that trust is there. So sometimes that might take 2 projects. Sometimes you could potentially pitch this from the start that they're really bought in. Now, a lot of people are worried about pitching a retainer, but there is really an upside for the client too, right? Why? Because when you are continuously building out new solutions for clients, they see the ROI. There will be much less friction in the process because there's no back and forth proposals. So you can deliver these automations a lot quicker to the client. You can also guarantee them your availability, of course, through this retainer. And as an extra incentive, what I did is offer a discount on my hourly rate of around 20% to the client. What I also used to do is pitch this retainer model from the start. I told clients the only way I work with clients is on retainers, because I prefer working with clients long term, and I know that I will only make a real impact in your business if we make this a long-term priority. Now, of course, you can say there, I understand you want to see the value of these automations first and see that I can actually deliver, so we can do a first project based on a project price. But that pitch can also be a great lead qualifier, because the best types of leads are the ones who understand that this should be a long-term project and is not a quick fix to their business. Now, the support retainer you could use if there was only one project and no follow-ups, then you can pitch a support retainer with a small amount of fixed hours, let's say 5 to 10 hours, that's built recurringly to maintain the automations, to have minor updates like LLM upgrades, minor rule changes. But it's really important to communicate that you do not build out new features or new automations on this package. Again, very rarely do we use these except for in the productized solutions, which I'll get to later in this video, as most clients want to continuously build out new automations. Now, also, once you have a few of these retainer clients and you don't want to grow a team yet, the way to scale here is to increase your hourly rate, right? So instead of having $100 an hour, if you have more and more clients, you can up that to $150 an hour. Now, once you got that consistent flat cash flow, and this can take a while, right? And this is probably the hardest stage in your journey, right? But if you're moving on to the next stage and you're thinking about hiring a team or really scaling up, past that 10K or 15K a month mark, then you have basically two routes you can go, right? You can start to hire and start scaling a custom agency, or you can scale through productization, where you double down on one specific solution that you maybe found that provided a lot of ROI to a customer. Now, in my case, I split my team and I sort of went both routes. I start with how to price in a custom AI agency. Now here, you really want to start working with bigger clients and bigger deal sizes. So the goal here also is, of course, to build out the team. You need developers. Eventually, you'll need delivery managers who are customer facing and manage these projects. And the goal, of course, in this stage is to grow and scale profitably. Now, the same goal applies here. We want to build the client relationship, the trust, and show the ROI in one or two initial builds and try to get the client onto a retainer or an AI partnership. Now, with bigger companies, they sometimes need or aren't ready to get building right away. Sometimes they require an initial stage of education, which can be done through workshops or audits. But generally, we still see with mid-sized businesses, we mostly follow that same path as in stage one. Dynamics are going to change here a bit because now you have a team that you have to pay for. And that's why pricing all of a sudden becomes far more important than in stage one. That's why fixed pricing is absolutely not recommended in this stage anymore. I learned this the hard way and it almost entirely killed my agency, because the problem with fixed pricing is that if you've underscoped a project and you run a team and you have to pay a team, you'll run at a loss, which is, again, is fine if you're still alone, but if you have a team, it can really kill the business. That's why being good at scoping at this stage is going to be really important. Now, the pricing model that we use as a default in our custom AI agency is time and material-based pricing. And how does this model work? We basically have a scoping call. This can be the second call or the third call in the sales process, or if they're already a client, these are calls made for each new project or automation we're going to do. Then our technical team and CTO create a PRD, or a product requirement document, that basically lists out all the requirements and tasks to execute on in this project. If you want a template of our PRD, you can also find it in my AI Accelerator. And then basically based on that PRD, we make an estimation, a time estimation of the project. So we list out the amount of hours each of the tasks inside of the project takes. And we multiply that time estimation through our rate chart. Now, how do we calculate our rate or hourly rate? If you're just starting out, it's simple. This is just your developer hourly cost. Now, this can get a bit more complex when you're growing. Like, for example, we have senior and junior developers. So we have different prices for different seniority levels. That's why we break it down by tasks. Break down which kind of seniority level we need for each of the tasks, and then we get to a blended rate. But don't worry about that for now. You just have to put your developer rate. Then we get that to our initial price. So let's say the time estimation is 100 hours, our developer cost is $100, and we get to an initial project price of $10,000. Now, if you have a delivery manager, we add another 15% on top of that for the delivery manager. If you don't, you can ignore that. So in this case, we get to 11,500, and then we add a 50 to 60% margin on top, which of course is the profit margin for our agency, which will bring it to, what is it, $17,000 or something. And lastly, what we do is we add in a not to exceed cap of 10 to 35% on top of that. Now, what does this mean? When you're working with these bigger clients and bigger projects, you need to add in a buffer. Again, if not, you can really kill the agency business, because projects needs change all the time, right? And some unforeseen things will almost always happen. So that's why we always include a 10 to 35% buffer to basically give us some slack on the agency side for these unforeseen things. But we also add in that not to exceed cap in order for the client to be able to plan costs and not overpay too much. So we use 10% for smaller solutions and solutions we are more familiar with, and 35% for more complex solutions and solutions we are less familiar with. Now, in terms of when to charge them, you can do different models here. You can do 25% upfront or 50% upfront, and then the rest after the project is delivered, when you know how many hours your team actually spent. And then you add that extra percentage of hours you might have into the billing of the second part. And because you're always communicating the amount of hours, etc., it also adds a lot of transparency between you and the customer, which again is great to create that trust, right? Because again, in stage two, the purpose still is to get them onto a retainer after building initial trust. Now, the other option you have in rare scenarios is value-based pricing. Now, in our experience for custom projects, this is very rarely doable or practical, because you need to be extremely clear on the metrics. The ROI should be absurdly obvious to the customer, and in order to do that, you have to have very clear metrics on the business. Now, most businesses are very messy. They don't have clear metrics, especially not in their head. And you really have to dig in the sales process to understand these metrics, to make calculations on what the possible ROI can be, which if you don't have years of sales experience is first of all going to be really hard to do. It's going to be uncomfortable questions. You really have to have a lot of business acumen, but even more difficult with these custom projects is that you've never built this solution, so you don't know yet what the outcome of your solution or your system is going to be. You can estimate it or guess it, but there's no way to prove or know beforehand exactly what outcome it will produce. So you can guess it, of course, and that's why the ROI has to be absurdly obvious, because you don't know exactly how much of an impact it's going to have. And even if you can apply this model, most of the time, this first project, again, is not about making the most amount of money out of this first project. It's about building the trust. We a lot of times don't even make money in these first projects because we're trying to get them onto the retainer, which is really what's going to give us that long-term consistent cash flow inside of our agency. Now, if you find a potential use case for it, the way you can do it is still based on your cost. So you scope out the solution, but you just multiply it by 2 or 3 or 4x, depending on the ROI it can provide to the client. You can also think, which is going to be hard again, right? But you calculate the yearly cost for the business, and then you take a 25% of that and you charge them that. Like, this is all a little bit fuzzy anyway. So all you can do is really just up the price a bit because you know this is going to provide a lot of value. Now, for retainers, again, you have two different types of retainers. Build retainer, the one we want, and the support retainer. The build retainer, again, works best if the client is bought in. There's an ongoing backlog or product roadmap with new automations or automation upgrades. We basically sell a fixed amount of hours or FTEs per month. Now, why do we want to do this? Of course, again, consistent cash flow. Now, why does a customer want this? Because it first of all means there's a lot less friction in the process, especially if you have a bigger agency. There's going to be a lot of bureaucracy and a lot less back and forth with scoping, proposals, etc. with a retainer model. And therefore, these projects can just be delivered a lot faster to the client, right? And this is also where you can communicate why you work on retainers. Also, you can add in another incentive, which we sometimes do, which is to provide a small discount on the hourly rate or on the rate chart to incentivize the client to jump onto the retainer. Now, on this retainer, you still scope every project, you lay out the amount of hours, and you put this also in an SOW, a statement of work, which is basically an agreement between you and your client of what's included in this project and what not. Again, if you want a template of our SOW, it's also available in the Accelerator. Now, the client, through transparently communicating this, the client knows how long he can expect to take each automation to be delivered. And they can also decide on how fast they want to move by deciding how many hours a month they want to commit to for the retainer. And they can also adjust this month by month, right? We have clients on 200 or even 300 hours a month, some on less, which of course that many hours can be amazing, but of course you also need a significant developer team in order to do this. And the other option, of course, is a support retainer, which again is more when it's a one-off system with maintenance. Again, this is just a packaged amount of hours per month, generally anywhere between 8 to 40, depending on the complexity of the solution. An amazing opportunity we have in AI, of course, is that from a custom agency, we can identify use cases to potentially productize and double down on. This is also the path we followed with our AI SEO system. We later also added recruiting systems and LinkedIn systems. Now, when you productize solutions, things change a bit. Dynamics change and pricing will change too. Now, the goals have changed also because here we really want to double down on scaling acquisition, of course, for this productized solutions. We also want to double down on optimizing one solution or outcome and systemize the delivery of that solution as much as possible. Now, I wouldn't go completely hands off right from the get-go in AI productized solutions because most of these productized solutions, at least at the beginning, still need some customer education. Most AI things need education at the moment, whether it's productized or custom. They need some onboarding generally and some support. And this will also give you the feedback to improve the solution, which is very necessary in those initial stages to optimize your product. And of course, eventually you can make it completely hands-off depending on the use case. Now, here, of course, we're going to switch the pricing equation. We don't want to price based on cost anymore, but on the value that our system provides. Now, I think more and more productized AI solutions will move towards outcome-based pricing if possible, because AI is the first technology that can actually automate labor. So it makes sense for softwares to not charge based on seats, but to charge based on outcomes delivered for a company. Now, that being said, performance-based pricing is probably not the strategy you want to at least start with, except if you have a very specific lead generation use case where the metrics and the outcomes are very clearly measurable and tied to revenue. For example, with our SEO solution, that's going to be hard because it's hard to measure direct revenue or meetings booked from SEO efforts. But for example, if you have a solution that does cold outreach or LinkedIn outreach together with a service you provide, then this might make more sense. Now, there are multiple ways of doing this. You can have a specific fee per meeting booked. You can have a rev share or a commission of 10 or 20% on each of the sale made. But of course, in that case, it's also going to be important that you know that the business you work with is actually running efficiently, to know that your efforts actually lead to sales. Now, there are also other ways to charge outcome-based. Of course, some AI SaaS, some customer service SaaS, for example, now charge based on ticket resolved. You can have asset-based pricing, meaning, let's say, each blog article created or each LinkedIn post created. But again, you have to trust the company. You have to have some experience in order to do this. So generally, what I recommend, at least to start with, is value-based pricing. Now, value-based pricing, again, is a little bit fuzzy because most of the time it's going to be hard to measure the exact value a solution provides. For example, our SEO solution definitely saves SEO agencies a lot of time in content creation and strategy, but exactly how much is very hard to measure. And it depends on the size of the agency, the amount of clients they manage, the price of their content writers, the amount of human revision, etc., etc. But what is clear, of course, is that it provides big value to SEO agencies, as these are costly and time-consuming processes. And we can also safely assume that bigger agencies get a lot more value out of the system. So we do charge more for larger agencies, also because they require a bit more onboarding and handholding. But the big point with these productized solutions is that now you've actually built this and sold this solution maybe one or a few times. So you should have a better idea and a good idea of what clients are willing to pay for it and the value it provides, even though it's still fuzzy. Therefore, you can really start to switch that from cost-based pricing to value-based pricing, which also, of course, mean that the margins can significantly increase because it's more productized. Now, a good way of starting here is, if you've ever built this custom before, you already know how much it was on the cost side. You know what the client was willing to pay for it. And even though it's now productized, you know you can sell it at that price or more. When you have productized solutions, you generally don't have a build retainer because you're trying to optimize this one solution. So you don't want to be doing a lot of custom stuff. Maybe you can do some at the beginning when customers are asking for specific features that will add to your productized solution anyway. But mostly you want to optimize your resources to improve your solution. So what you can do is a support retainer, which we also do on the SEO side, which can basically cover the minor updates like NNM updates, minor tweaks, and ongoing training and guidance on using the system. And this is what we're seeing in AI, right? Whether it's completely custom or productized, most of the time, the whole world and the whole business world needs to at least some education on how to use these products most efficiently. And education is almost always a part of your offer in any of these stages. So I hope this was helpful. Again, if you want more help from me and my team in starting and scaling your own AI business, you can check out my AI Accelerator in the link in the description below. Now, in order to price properly, scaling and scoping AI projects is really key. So if you want to learn how to do that, you can check out this video here above.